The eighth stage, Pilgrim's Progress. They went until they came to the Delectable Mountains, which belonged to the Lord of that hill, which we spoke about earlier. So they went up to the mountains to look at the gardens and orchards, the vineyards and fountains of water. There they also drank, washed themselves, and freely ate of the vineyards. On the tops of these mountains were shepherds, feeding their flocks, and they stood by the side of the highway. So the pilgrims approached them to stand and talk, as is the custom for weary travelers. They leaned upon their staffs and asked, "Whose delectable mountains are these? And who owns these sheep that are feeding here?" "These mountains are Emmanuel's land," the shepherds answered. "They are within sight of his city, and the sheep also are his. He laid down his life for them." "Is this the way to the celestial city?" Christian asked. The shepherds said, "You are heading in the right direction. How far do we have to go?" "It's too far for any except those who shall certainly arrive there." Christian looked at the way ahead and asked, "Is the way safe or dangerous?" "Safe for those for whom it is to be safe, but transgressors undoubtedly fall along the way." Christian considered the shepherd's words and asked, "Is there a place where pilgrims who are weary and faint can find temporary rest in the way?" The shepherds nodded. "The Lord of these mountains has given us orders not to be forgetful to entertain strangers. Therefore, this good place is at your disposal." I saw also in my dream that when the shepherds perceived that Christian and Hopeful were travelers, they asked them some questions, which the pilgrims answered just as they had in other places all the way. The shepherds asked, "Where are you from? And how did you enter into the way? And by what means have you persevered so far? For few travelers who begin to come here ever show their face on these mountains." But when the shepherds heard their answers, they were pleased with them. Their countenance turned favorable, and they looked very lovingly upon the two of them and said, "Welcome to the Delectable Mountains." The shepherds, whose names were Knowledge, Experience, Watchful, and Sincere, took them by the hand and led them to their tents, where they partook of a feast. The shepherds said, "We would be content for you to stay here a while and to become acquainted with us, and even more we recommend you enjoy the comfort provided by the bounty of these delectable mountains." Christian and Hopeful told them that they would be happy to stay, and then went to bed because it was very late. Then I saw in my dream that in the morning the shepherds invited Christian and Hopeful to walk with them upon the mountains. So they joined them and walked along together for a while, enjoying the pleasant view on every side. Then the shepherds said to each other, "Shall we show these pilgrims some of the wonders that are to be seen here?" They agreed they should, and took them first to the top of a hill called Error, which was very steep on the farthest side. "Look down to the bottom," they said. So Christian and Hopeful peered down and saw several men dashed all to pieces at the bottom, for they had fallen from the top. Christian looked from the bodies to the shepherds and asked, "What does this mean?" The shepherds answered, "Have you not heard about those led into error by listening to Hymenaeus and Philetus concerning the faith of the resurrection of the body?" "Yes," Christian and Hopeful answered in unison. The shepherds replied, "They are those you see dashed in pieces at the bottom of this mountain, and they have remained unburied to this day, as you can see, to serve as an example to others, to take care that they don't climb too high or come too near the brink of this mountain." Then I saw the shepherds take them to the top of another mountain named Caution. There the shepherds told them to look into the distance. So when Christian and Hopeful looked afar, they thought they perceived several men walking up and down among a number of tombs located there. As they watched, they noticed the men were blind, because they stumbled sometimes over the tombs and were unable to get out from among them. Once again Christian asked, "What means this?" The shepherds answered them with another question. "A little below these mountains, did you notice a stile that led into a meadow on the left hand of this way?" The two pilgrims glanced at each other and back at the shepherds. "Yes." "From that stile," the shepherds said, "there goes a path that leads directly to Doubting Castle, which is kept by giant despair. And these men," they pointed to the blind wandering among the tombs, "came once on pilgrimage, just as you do now. That is until they came to that same stile. Because the right way was rough in that place, they chose to leave the way and cross over into that meadow. There they were taken by giant despair and cast into Doubting Castle, where they were kept in the dungeon. Eventually he put out their eyes and led them among those tombs, where he has left them to wander to this very day, so that the saying of the wise man might be fulfilled. He who wanders from the way of understanding will rest in the assembly of the dead." Christian and Hopeful looked at each other with tears streaming down their cheeks, but they said nothing to the shepherds. Then I saw in my dream that the shepherds led them to another place at the bottom of the valley, where there was a door on the side of a hill. The shepherds opened the door and told them to look in. They looked in, and it was very dark and smoky. From within the darkness they also thought they heard the rumbling sound of fire accompanied by tormented cries, and the smell of brimstone wafted from the door. Christian turned to the shepherds and asked, "What does this mean?" The shepherds told them, "This is a byway to hell, where hypocrites enter in. This includes those who sell their birthright with Esau, those who sell their master with Judas, those who blaspheme the gospel with Alexander, and those who lie and deceive with Ananias and Sapphira, his wife." Then Hopeful said, "I noticed that every one of these put on a show of going on a pilgrimage, just like we are doing. Is that so?" The shepherds nodded. "Yes, and they traveled for quite a long time, too." "Exactly how far is it possible for them to go on in pilgrimage, since they were miserably cast away?" "Some farther, and some not so far as these mountains." Then the pilgrims spoke one to the other. "We certainly have need to cry to the strong for strength." The shepherds nodded their agreement. "Yes, and you will have need to draw on that strength once you have it too." By this time the pilgrims had a desire to press forward on their journey, and the shepherds agreed that they should. So they all walked together towards the end of the mountains. Then the shepherds said one to another, "Let us show them the gates of the celestial city, if they have skill to look through our perspective glass." The pilgrims eagerly accepted the invitation, and so they were led to the top of a high hill called Clear, and were handed the glass to look through. They attempted to look through it, but the memory of the last thing the shepherds had shown them made their hands shake so much that they could not look steadily through the glass. However, even with shaky hands, they thought they saw something like the gate and also some of the glory of the place. Then they prepared to depart and sang this song. "Thus by the shepherds secrets are revealed, which from all other men are kept concealed. Come to the shepherds then, if you would see things deep, things hid, and that mysterious be." When they were about to depart, one of the shepherds gave them written instructions of the way ahead. Another cautioned them to beware of the flatterer. The third told them to take care not to sleep upon enchanted ground. And the fourth bid them Godspeed. So I awoke from my dream. Next week, the 9th stage. Thanks for watching.